Guess it all started 25 years ago and 1 monthish.
1 monthish. Yeah.
And 1 monthish. Yeah.
Unless you started at conception.
Yes, it all started 25 years and 10 months ago when my dad put his dick in my mom.
Right. Unless you started at the Big Bang, which is like a bit earlier than that too.
It did start then, actually. You're so right.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about your dad and your mom. Like the Big Bang is, it's like
The Big Bang.
Cosmic dad and mom, it's like the laws of physics and matter.
Yes, but we are getting a bit far away from me
too
here.
Too much.
So,
Although, okay, so it all started in Australia
yes,
then.
I was born in Australia to a family of, I am the 7th child of 11 siblings completely.
Aren't you the 6th?
Aren't I the 6th?
Because you have 5 older siblings.
I am the 7th.
Really?
Yes, I'm the 7th child.
Okay.
I'm right.
So
where I am in my family.
You have 6 older siblings and 4 younger siblings?
That is right.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And so, yeah, it's a very big family. And I have 5 brothers and 5 sisters. 4 younger than me and 6 older than me.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. And I was raised in a pretty small Australian town, homeschooled.
So, hold on. Could you tell me a bit about why it was such a huge family? Like, why did your parents have so many kids?
It's a good question. Well, when I asked I've had conversations about it with my mom and my dad. Why would you have so many kids? Like, what the hell are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
They told me my dad specifically told me because God's first commandment to Adam and Eve was to go forth and make babies. Something along those lines.
There's something funny about that. Like, it's almost as if
go forth and multiply or reproduce or something like that.
The first Christian commandment is like, go fuck.
Yeah.
Have
and
babies.
my dad's like, well, that's a good excuse to fuck. Yeah. So yeah, there's a baseline of they don't believe in contraceptions. They're a bit more I don't know. I also think probably for my dad it was a good way of I don't know. He probably put a lot of hope into his kids. So he was hoping that eventually one of them would bring something back to him and complete his cycle, his life, fulfill him, because he definitely wasn't a fulfilled man. So I think he was searching a little bit of that in children.
Was he a loving father?
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
He loved in the way he knew how, but he doesn't know how to love himself.
Oh.
And so his version of love was corrupted pretty much to the basis of himself. So it didn't exactly reflect onto us. He tried his best, and he would probably definitely say he loves us, but what that is in practice and what that is in feeling is different.
And with so many children, did he have time to like bond with you? To did you spend time alone with your father, for example? Did you
Up
have
until a point, I think. When I was young, I was always very ambitious. There was times, the first thing I wanted to do was a book writer. I wanted to be an author, write fantasy books. I wrote my little stories. And the next thing I wanted to be was a movie director. And each time my dad would be there, like trying to support my goals, and he would buy me, he would read my stories or buy me a video camera and stuff like that. So he was like I was also the oldest boy of the marriage of him and my mum. So I was the first boy that they had together. So I've got 2 half brothers, 2 half sisters.
Okay.
From my mum and dad's previous marriages. So yeah. So I think I was like he gave a lot of attention to me up until a point. And at one point we moved to the city, and I'm pretty sure around the same time he had affairs around my mom and all that kind of stuff. And he got further away from the family, and he went and worked in the city half the time, pretty much, while we were still in the country. But anyway, I
Mm.
think we're getting a little bit ahead with talking about my dad.
Of course, of course.
Um,
You said you are the first uh, boy, the first of his boy with a new marriage.
mhm.
And can we share your dead name and what it means? Like,
What do I know what it means?
no, but did he name you? Um, like, do you know what I mean? Do you want to share that here or not really?
Hmm. Hadn't really thought about that.
Hmm. Oh, we don't have to. It's Bible stuff.
Yeah, I had a biblical, nothing crazy. I wasn't Jesus or Moses or nothing, but
Behold my son,
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I don't think there was specific meaning to it. I just had a very biblical name. My family was very
Yeah.
Christian,
Mhm.
like square and everything like that. My dad especially.
All right.
And so, yes, I was born into this family, and I was raised a very sheltered life. For socialization and stuff, we were homeschooled, but it wasn't exactly school at home. It
Hmm.
was more like my mum and dad teaching us the old-fashioned way, and the only socialization I had was family and other homeschoolers, which were a very similar idea with maybe a little bit more actual education. But the education was a very biblical education, the world's 2,000 years old.
Oh,
The, you know,
how can that be possible? Like,
well, evolution is just a big theory that
of course.
isn't right and all that
But
kind of stuff.
even the
And
world being 2000, like, it means was the world created
well,
with
like in
Jesus?
the no, like in 5,000 years old. Sorry,
Oh, yeah, okay.
5,000 years old. Yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Kind of.
no, but I was asking them because every now and then you would get a bit of education. It would be like, this tree has proof of thousands of years of existence. It's an old,
Mm.
old ass tree. And I'm
Mhm.
like, how is that possible? And Mom's like, do you think when God created the world, he created little seedlings everywhere? No, obviously he created full-blown trees out of nowhere.
Oh, all
And I'm
right.
like,
I
oh,
see.
okay.
He also created the dinosaur bones in the
No,
ground.
no,
And
dinosaurs lived with humans and they were on Noah's Ark as well.
all right.
Yeah. And I
All
thought
right.
that was really cool. I was super obsessed with dinosaurs for a long time, partly because I
Mhm.
believed that we were living on the earth at the same time as them.
It's so interesting, this concept of Noah's Ark and like one giant boat made out of wood with like dinosaurs as huge as fucking like buildings on
Yeah.
it. Like at some point you gotta like
The thing is, we
you
didn't
gotta
have
put
this
rational
critical.
in mind.
We didn't really teach critical thinking so much at homeschool. We were more
Mm.
like, the Bible is the word of God, and so if
Mhm.
the word of God says Noah took one of each animal, and animal includes dinosaurs and
Mhm.
insects, he took
Mhm.
them all on his
All
ark.
right, cool.
Um,
That's a
it's
lot.
pretty wild. And after at some point, you start growing up, you start experiencing the world, you start getting more
Yeah.
information, you start going, that doesn't make complete sense actually.
Mhm.
But yeah, so my socialization up until 10 years, I lived in the country like that. Pretty much, I only had one friend, one really close friend who was a boy around the same age as me, born in the same year, who was also homeschooled in a similar way with the Bible and all that. And yeah, I would see him once every 2 weeks for Titus group, where we would come and talk about the Bible. Where the parents would come and talk about the Bible and the kids would play outside, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was my growing up, and really it was him and my siblings that were
Mhm.
my complete
Mhm.
social circle
All right.
until roughly at least the base of 10 years old when we moved to Sydney.
Mm. We have about the painting of your childhood, like homeschooled, Christian Bible,
Mhm.
all of that in Australia, in the country. So, was it hard for you to relate to other kids, other family? Like,
For a for a while, there wasn't that many other families that weren't homeschooled that I interacted with. There was definitely you saw school kids in the street and stuff, and I definitely
mm,
felt scared by them. They were like, "Ooh, the crowd
mm,
of children that laugh and
I've got the
play and
demons.
have fun and I don't know, make jokes and say swear words and stuff like that." It's like
Mm-hmm.
they've been brainwashed by Satan and maybe they. But I also knew that like I wanted to be like them. I wanted to have
Mm.
what they had, and So there was a bit of insecurity there as well, knowing that I'm kind of the weird, freaky person that just lives in the
Mm.
neighborhood but isn't actually part of the community. That kind of
Mhm.
sense, you
I
know?
see what you mean. Yeah.
hmm So yeah, it wasn't exactly easy, but I still had a good childhood. I had a lot of books and imagination. I would play outside and with my brothers and sisters as well.
Mhm.
I feel like in some sense in my childhood I was, probably I didn't hang out with my older sisters too much, but hang out with my younger brother and younger sister a lot. And being kind of the oldest and I don't know, the most experienced, I felt like I don't know, I was like the leader of the family
Of your
group.
pack, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I see. At what time, at what age did you start having feelings of, "Oh, I'm a bit like unlike others, and I might be."
You're talking about trans feelings?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I wouldn't have been able to classify them as trans feelings up until a lot later on when I knew that trans even existed,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it's not a concept that you're taught at all as a Christian. In fact, when I would encounter this is after moving to the city already, I never encountered it before then. So after 10 years old and plus, when I'd encounter drag queens or gays on TV, my dad would always be like, "Whoa, that's disgusting." And I'm there like, "Yeah, fucking gross gay people on TV," you know?
Wearing makeup.
Yeah, wearing makeup or, giving each other a hug, and it's like, "Oh,
Oh.
affection between men."
That touched wood.
No. Well, I mean, if they were touching wood, I don't know what he's watching, but, okay. But yeah. So up until then, but, I've looked back on my life with the knowledge I have now and seen how, with my friend, the other homeschooling boy around the same age as me, we would often, when we get together, play a kind of like a family or house, or I don't know what you call it, where
Oh,
one's
yeah.
the mum, one's the dad, and we go out and
Mm.
live our life. And I think we call it chicks or something.
Chicks.
Yeah, and we were like warrior people that would go out and hunt food and like make
Ah.
shelter and then come back at night. And I would always be the wife, and I'd be like the one making food and
Mhm.
preparing clothes and stuff, and he would be out there like, "Oh, I think I see a wolf or something on the horizon," you
Mhm.
know? And so it very often had an archetype of when we would play together. He would be the man, I'd be the woman, and we would approach the game, what we were playing, just like that. And, when we were very young and exploring, obviously, being kids and not knowing exactly, not being taught any kind of body education or sex education, anything
Mm.
like that, we would explore a little bit together as well, like that. And also in the same setting of I'm the wife and he's the husband, and we're gonna, you know, do a little bit of touching each other.
Mhm.
But it was pretty innocent, just kids, getting
Of
naked and be like,
course.
"Oh, you got a willy," you know.
That's just exploration.
hmm And yeah, so that was probably from the years of being like 4 years old to like 9 years old. That's how I'd play. And
Mhm.
then with my siblings and stuff, we would watch TV shows and like Avatar: The Last Airbender or like cartoons on TV, and we'd always assign a character from the TV show to each of us, and we'd be like, "That's my
Right.
character. Like
Mhm.
you're Aang, but I'm tough." And so she's a bit androgynous. She's a bit more of a, I don't know, but she's still a girl. And I'd be like, "That's me. I don't want to be
Mhm.
Sokka or Aang. I want to be the girl." And it would often happen like that with different TV shows. I can't exactly tell you which ones, but I would always choose probably the kind of like alternative character
Mhm.
that's not exactly fitting into like steady gender roles. Like that's the man, that's the woman. This is more like the I don't know,
A bit of both, a bit
yeah,
of
the
in
androgynous
between.
character
Yeah,
kind
I
of
see
deal.
what you
Yeah.
mean. It's your role model who you are relating
hmm
was a bit on the edge, playing the nuance between both genders.
hmm
It's interesting.
And I would always have my girl voice, which I don't know, I'd whip it out all the time. I'd be like, I'm a girl. It's like kind of Valley Girl,
Mhm.
as a
Bit,
kid,
yeah,
you know.
the girly accent.
Exactly. Put on the
Mhm.
girly accent. hmm So yeah, that's probably the kind of things I recognize about trans feelings
Mhm.
before I moved to the city. And beyond that, it kind of gets a little bit the city like it kind of changed the thing because moving to the city I moved to the city at the age of 10. There was the initial cutoff from the social life I had, like, created in the country,
From a
which
more rural Australia
yeah,
to the biggest city, Sydney.
yeah. So, there was, like, at first there was a rupture where, like, I didn't have any friends and I was in a whole new place, and in fact, it kind of felt more like it exacerbated the issue of I'm not one of the normal kids. In the
Ah,
city, you see school kids going everywhere,
yeah.
you see life happening around you, and you're still
Mhm.
homeschooled and still, you don't you play soccer maybe, you go out and meet people like that, and you bond well enough, but you definitely feel like you're a bit handicapped on, like you're a bit, yeah, on the level of socialization. And so for a while, that happened, and I read books, and I started playing video games on the computer pretty much. That's around that
Right.
time. And yeah, watching lots and lots of porn.
How
Um,
old were you when you discovered pornography?
Probably like 8.
Mhm.
Mhm. And I was just searching boobs on the computer.
Ah,
And in
yeah.
fact, it started off first searching boobs, but like my first like the pornography I didn't consume at a younger age was actually porn flash games,
Uh-huh.
on like Newgrounds or something.
It's cartoon stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I remember I'd done the cartoon stuff for a while, and then I remember the first time I saw an actual like porn with two people having sex together. It was a very low quality, just like a still plane, and like
Ah,
you could just
pixels
make out
mashing.
silhouettes kind of, but also there was the moaning and all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
I felt pretty rocked by that experience. I was like, oh, this is
Mhm.
different. This isn't cartoons. This is I'm seeing the act that makes life, and I wasn't ready
Whoa.
for this. So that was probably around 9 years old. So when I saw the actual, like I seen boobs and stuff, but the sex act itself was
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, it was different.
Did puberty change a lot of how you felt? Like, because you said you started to feel, to recognize yourself in the role of the girl, um, pretty early on, playing games, like innocent
Hmm.
child games. But after having discovered, well, sexuality in pornography and having puberty awaken that side of you, the hormones and the sex drive
So
budding.
like when it comes about the trans feelings and how puberty affected me, I think I was around 12 years old when I like at this point I was already consuming porn, playing lots of video games. I was still very in my head about wanting to be a movie director, and so at this point, my
Mm.
dad had got me a big camera, and I had been like making little home movies with my friends and stuff.
Mhm.
And I had more friends now because coming to the city, you meet more homeschoolers, but these are more serious homeschoolers. They're not country, small community homeschoolers. These
Mhm.
are city homeschoolers who realize that their kids need to be on some kind of equal ground to the kids all around them in the
I
city.
see. I see.
So I started mingling a little bit with that, but that was also very still Christian, like centered. Most of the
Mhm.
homeschooling friends I had were very Christian still. In fact, my whole community was church and homeschooling, which is just a big Christian community almost. Um, and so around 12 years old, I started hitting puberty pretty much. And a lot of angst came with that, like pretty intense angst. Um,
At this age, you are pretty much aware that because of the background you grew up in, like watching porn and this side of sexuality was almost like hell, like
I
a,
felt very
a
guilty
bad
about
thing.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
There
right.
was a lot of, I don't know, it's like, you're definitely not supposed to be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but the thing is, even before I'd watched porn, I had like thought a lot about it, like obsessed about sex and my weird, I don't know. I obsessed about it a lot just in myself, and like I want to understand more. And so, um, yeah, if I felt guilty about it, even just thinking about it in my head. I remember one time I was listening to Bob Marley, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a woman going, "Whoa!" It's like making their like vocalizations and stuff. And I remember being like 9 years old or something, and listening to the woman's vocalizations and like being like, "Oh, that's hot." It's like they're
Oh.
moaning and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
feeling bad about that, like sexualizing the noise of woman like singing or like crying.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I remember I went to mum and was like, "Oh, I feel bad. Bob Marley's corrupting my head, you know." And she was like, "It's totally fine. Don't worry
Mhm.
about it."
Mhm.
But I felt bad still. And I remember staying up in late in bed praying to God to please forgive me for being a sexual pervert pretty much, and feeling super guilty about any time I would make an act towards sexuality, maybe to with my friend, maybe towards my sister or my family, or even towards just anybody. I would like be a bit pervy,
Mhm.
and nothing crazy happened, but I would feel bad about that, and it's probably fair, but I don't know. It really stuck me, and for like I was dealing with that feeling of guilt pretty much ever since like I started going into pornography, going into like sexuality, like experience like discovering sexuality pretty much. So there's a big feeling of like guilt and sexuality were like intertwined,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so by the time I was like watching porn completely, the guilt feeling I had kind of like numbed it a little bit. I had pushed on the feeling so much that it didn't used to grip me as much as it used to. It
Mhm.
was more like I know it feels bad, and I like might think about it for 15 minutes rather than 3 hours at night. You know,
Oh, I see, I
it
see.
kind of
Yeah.
the intensity of it gripped me a lot less, and to the point where it's hard to like wrap my head around how to explain numbing the guilt, but also like it's not like it's not there. It's like you're just pushing it down.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
at some point, it all erupted with my whole experience with God because, like, I was a Christian as a child. I didn't really know any better, and I believed in God. I believed in sin. I believed in hell. I believed in heaven. I believed that Jesus died on the cross for my sins, and I needed to really beg for forgiveness and lead the ideal life of
Mhm.
get married, have kids, preach the word of God.
Mm.
I don't know. Don't satisfy your primal human urges and be chaste and holy. I don't know. But the thing is, I knew that wasn't for me. Like I'd been gripped by sexuality for so long. I'd been gripped by feeling weird, and at this point, so much happens in puberty. It's hard to get the timeline right, pretty much. But
You told me that during that time in puberty, you started to do role plays. You
mhm.
started
I
to
think that's a little
write.
bit ahead of where we're at currently.
Oh, okay.
So I'm still 12. I think I started role playing around 14, and so
Mhm.
at around 12 years old, around this time, I was actually beginning to pray that I would wake up as a woman, as if I was never a man. And at the same time, I was also beginning to get lots and lots of feelings of resentment and like I would classify it as hatred and angst, like a brutal teenage hormonal infused angst at my mom and my sisters. And like
Oh.
yeah, I was like women. I hate women, and it was a very envious hate. It was like a resent the
Mm.
fact that they're going on off onto that path of the female path, puberty and
Which
all
you
that.
wanted for yourself.
I didn't exactly understand that I wanted it for myself, even though I prayed for it at night. I
Mhm.
just it was weird. I didn't
Mhm.
exactly. I just wanted that instead, you
Mhm.
know,
I
and
see.
I felt wacky about that, and I felt like it was very hopeless. And the fact that I was even praying to God was like I was like I was desperate, like, "God, it's just not working right like this," you know? Um, and so, yeah, I was really resenting women in general, and at that point, I was becoming like a teenage boy, and I was meeting teenage girls,
Mhm.
and, the sexual attraction was really starting to, mount as well, like, once you start meeting girls that are becoming women and their bodies start having an effect on you, and
Yeah.
they start potentially being maybe I could be girlfriend with her or whatever.
Mhm.
I started talking to a lot of girls on Facebook and having interactions, and I quickly realized that I was very weird and poorly socialized.
Oh.
Like I was a weird kid, and to me, kind of just pushed me further into staying at home on my computer.
Because it was uncomfortable for you to be in contact with the others.
Yeah, I just wasn't up to the social level to to get along with people.
That's the
And I
thing
had a
about.
couple of friends still that forgave my shortcomings, but
Mhm,
I was still weird, and they knew it, and I knew it. But
mhm. So that's the thing about computers and technology and phones in general. Like, whatever you're interacting with that isn't human is that you can be as weird and as almost like socially deficient with it. It's not gonna care.
it's very much with the internet, especially at the internet this time. It wasn't exactly social media. Facebook was just beginning to be the thing where everyone gets on. So
Right. Was that YouTube at the time?
of course there was YouTube, and I watched a lot of that still, and Minecraft and all that kind of stuff
Mhm,
was
mhm.
about the time. But yeah, I went to the internet, and the internet's very much more of a consume place than it is a put out and get feedback on what you are. And
Mhm.
I would often find going into the internet pretty much. So yeah, I was not well socialized, and I noticed just how drastic that was in interactions with the people around me.
Mm.
And so I kind of closed myself up and turned to the internet, where I went harder into porn, which made harder onto guilt and shame, and then harder onto less poor socialization. So it was kind of
Yeah,
like this cycle of
yeah.
shutting myself in and being the freak in
Mhm,
many ways.
mhm. It's a vicious circle of the more you interact with that, or computer and pornography, the less you can relate with the others.
And I guess in when I like what I my computer habits at the time where I was very much yeah, that's probably around the time I started doing erotic role play.
Mhm.
And at the time, I didn't do erotic role play playing as myself. I had to be an 18-year-old first of all, so I had to pretend I was someone else, and I would always pretend I was a girl. It was just
Mm.
like the go-to. And then I would create and weave whole other freaking lives of who I was. I would give myself jobs. I would say I wasn't homeschooled. I would like talk about a school existence that never happened and pretend to be socialized.
Mhm.
It was like
You would construct your fantasy personality and play that out.
I would cover up and put clothes over my real life flaws in a big
Mm.
disguise of somebody
Mhm.
else and say any of my flaws now I don't know, they don't exist.
Hidden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would catfish and do all that kind of stuff and use photos of other people and be like, "That's me," you
Yeah.
know? But, yeah. And so into role play, I don't remember, I think it started on, like, Omegle or something, uh,
With the webcams?
not with the webcams, just in text.
Okay.
And, I don't exactly really remember. It was probably mostly, like, fantasy stuff to start with. That was really what I was into a lot of, and video games and stuff like that. And then eventually, I found a forum where I started role playing consistently, and I would do all kinds of different role plays, from like Game of Thrones themes to made up like vampires and stuff.
Mhm.
And I remember there was this one, which is kind of like the formative, like that's like the earliest real role play that sticks in my head, and it was a very very extreme one, and it's kind of set a tone for my sexuality from this point on, which is probably going into like the darker, more you know, painful parts of what sexuality can be for me. It's probably a bit of trauma there as well.
Mhm.
But the role play was in base concept. I was a girl who was kidnapped by a vampire like cult and turned just enough into a vampire to be immortal, but not enough to be powerful. And then
Alright.
they would torture me.
Okay.
And so we role played that for a while, and it went pretty hard. For like I was 14 and I was writing the visceral experiences of you know, tearing flesh off your body and stuff like that. And it was, I guess, in some sense, it might have been expression of that resentment I had for like femininity, but playing it out on myself in a sense, like
Mhm. Mhm.
you know,
So it's almost as if, between being a man and a woman, being, um, a normal human and a vampire, you were, like, making the association between the 2, and you role played yourself as someone on the edge in between the two worlds, like
Mm.
enough of a vampire that you're not exactly human, but still not completely transformed.
And
It's
it's
almost
torture,
yeah.
and
It's
it's
so
so painful.
it's almost like you're transitioning to a woman, but you're not like
At this
completely
point, I
one
hadn't
too.
even really considered like, I didn't even know transgender was a thing still,
Of course, but
but,
it's the expression of an unconscious drive, like desire of expressing yourself, and you don't necessarily have to be conscious or to understand it to do it.
mhm. And so pretty much for the next 4 years, I continued on that same kind of deal. I made online friends and played video games with them, which wasn't anything to do sexuality or anything. I expressed my artistic side through video games and Blender, like 3D modeling and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I really got into metal music at the same time.
Hmm.
And so that's like the healthy parts of my internet life. But simultaneously with that, and there was a lot of good stuff going on at that stage, like with the people I'd met through the internet, which were an older group of dudes that I lied about my age, saying I was a little bit older, but I was true about who I was.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
was me. I told them about my life, my siblings, my family, all that kind of stuff, and they accepted me for who I was.
So you went from being a weird kid, not really able to socialize with the others outside, to being able to socialize with people on the internet, so
And in a
through
sense,
voice
it
chats
wasn't that I
on video
wasn't a weird
games.
kid. It was that they were also weird kids. And so we're all on the internet together, and my weirdness is just part of who everyone there is as well. The
Mm.
friends I made on the internet were also weird
Hmm.
kids,
Yeah,
and so they felt that they could understand me a little bit better, and I felt understood a lot better as well.
yeah. I lived through the same thing basically, um, making friends online on video games, where I basically didn't have a social life as a kid. Like I went to school and like I had a couple of other weird kid friends, the nerds basically.
Mhm.
But then as soon as I got home, I was just on the computer playing World of Warcraft and escaping that and finding my real friends.
Mhm.
Well,
Well,
internet
yeah,
friends.
which are very real as well. And
It's a
so
social life.
and so that's where I met someone called Rugs, who pretty much became like my older brother, my male role model figure.
The mentor.
Exactly, and, he taught me about philosophy, and he pretty much knew that I was a very sheltered homeschool person. He took it upon himself to give me a bit of education, to
Hmm.
teach me what evolution even is, to be like,
Hmm.
"Actually, this is how the real world works, according to how I see it," and, it helped a lot, but it also still made me the more you learn about the real world, the more you learn about just how far behind you are as a
Right.
16-year-old
Hmm.
uh, on the computer, like living your whole life on in front of the computer at this point. Like, going out into my family, I still didn't have a great relationship with my mom, my brothers and sisters. I had probably growing up into a teenage boy, I had probably hurt my brothers and sisters in many different ways, just manipulation or one day or another. Families that live together spend all time together,
Yeah.
and that's the only social life.
There's tension.
Yeah, it didn't work out eventually, and so yeah, I stayed in my room. I played video games on my computer, and when I wasn't playing video games and hanging out with my online friends, I was doing porn and erotic roleplay. And erotic roleplay in the same realm of very violent, very visceral, very very raw, and like never had any sexual experience in real life, so it was all just a very imagined kind of expressing visceral angst in
Hmm.
words, pretty much.
Hmm.
And there was like a sexual component to it, but it wasn't actually like for getting off. It was more like an expression of some side within me, and yeah, and it was a side that at the time, as a teenage boy, I believed I was a sociopath. I had been living on the internet for say from 13 years old to 16 years old.
Hmm.
I had been making online girlfriends and then kind of like taking a strange pleasure in breaking their hearts. Like got bored of them and then threw them away, and it was like I took like a little, like a, you know, it's like 'cause I was self-harming in a sense,
Mm.
but I was into the pain.
Yeah, it's having some kind of power of decision over whether or not you're in a relationship.
And
That's
I
like,
think the fact that I had hurt so many people, and like I knew I had hurt them, like they'd expressed their pain to me through the internet, and like I was young and in a lot of pain myself.
mhm,
But I think I had pushed that guilt down, pushed that shame down for so long that eventually um, it like started coming back and feeling it towards myself. And at some point, I just like kind of turned off a little bit, turned off my sensitivity to things, and I started seeing myself and claiming to be a sociopath, saying, I don't feel empathy. People are there for for that, so I can take what I need from them,
mm,
and it's all just a game of manipulating them until I get what I need, and if they get what they need, that's good for them. But if they don't, then too bad. It's all
mm,
about me anyway. But it was also it's all about me and I'm worthless kind of deal. So it's not a very positive outlook
for
on the
sure.
world. It's more like you know, I'm going to take from you for my worthless existence. You
Mhm.
know,
So you said you had a feeling that you are a sociopath. Did that last long? Do you remember the first time where you definitely told yourself, okay, no, I have feelings and I love others?
I think that it was when after I started taking hormones at this point, so it was a bit further along the line in the
Mm.
story. But yeah, I started taking hormones. I was on Facebook. I was scrolling through, and I saw a video of dogs getting reunited with their like veteran owners,
Oh,
and I just
right.
started crying. And I
Oh.
was like, huh. Oh, I mean, that doesn't feel like something a sociopath would feel. And,
Mhm.
like, I know I'm not a sociopath really. I think it was just, it was a defense mechanism kinda saying,
Mm.
I don't need to feel all this very strong emotion that I am feeling one way
Mhm.
or another. And, I was
Mhm.
expressing that I was feeling that in the role play and stuff like that as well.
It's part of the process of burying your feelings inside
Acknowledging them and
and
saying they're real instead of just something that,
mm.
you know,
Mhm.
that you wrote down once, you
Mhm.
know? So
So we started talking about hormones. Do you think it's a positive change in your life when you started?
so let's I'm almost getting up to the point where I
All
discovered
right.
what being transgender is and
Okay.
how that and how I went from there.
Go
So
for it. Go for it.
after 4 years of living online, being a girl in multiple forums and with people in text written and stuff like that. After a while, I realized, I've been living 2 years online as a fake girl that I created. Like, that's a bit strange. I'm still praying every night that I wake up as a girl. And one day, I'm watching a documentary with my friend, and a trans person's there, and I'm like, huh, a trans person. It's a whole new concept to me. Really, like I
Mhm.
never even thought about it.
Mm.
And I remember telling my friend that it was very interesting to me, and like I was and that's all. And he gave me a resource to a website of a a gender therapist around us in my area, like a real person. And I was like, huh. And I bookmarked the website. And every now and then I would go back and look at it and be like, and I'd read a little more on it. And I'll be like, is it possible that that's what I am? Like, really? I'm not sure. But then I would continue to be a girl on the internet. I would continue to pray that I wake up as a girl
Mhm.
every day. And then I'm like, shit. And as a very angsty teenager boy who had a delayed social development, finding out you might be transgender almost sounds like a death sentence for freakiness. You're like, okay, well, if now I'm transgender, I am so far behind on everything.
Mm.
I'm
Mhm.
all my life is going to be a game of catch up, you know? Like, gotta catch up on everything. It's like from being socialized to being a woman, which is still such a foreign concept to me. I thought I hated women.
Mhm.
So
And so would you say today that you have succeeded so far in catching up?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. And in fact, I feel like in some ways, the fact that I didn't have the same socialization of other people is actually kind of a superpower in a sense.
Makes
It
you
makes me
unique.
it makes me see the world in a different way. It gives
Mhm.
me different reference points for how I approach life as well.
Mhm.
But yeah. So I discovered transgender was a thing, and then one day I book an appointment with a gender therapist,
Mhm.
and just me,
All
and
by yourself?
yeah.
Did you have to pay for it?
Nope, it was free.
Alright.
I rang them up and everything, and I tell my mom I'm not going to the homeschool drama class today. I've got a therapy appointment, and at this point, she knew I was depressed. Like I spent my whole life in my room. I had episodes and stuff like this. I was breaking up with God. That was happening. Like I was like, to me, the Christian God, with all the information I was beginning to learn about myself, Christian God was telling me I was going to burn in hell
Mm.
just for the way I am.
Mhm.
I was the way I was, and that was in direct contrast and like it was against what I had been taught was right
Mhm.
in God's eyes.
So, would it be right to say that you were taught that God made you exactly like you are, and exactly what you are is gonna burn in hell? So God made
Pretty
you
much,
going to hell.
that's exactly it. And so the main actual issue for me when it came to all the teachings of the Bible and everything was predestination,
Mm.
where you're put in this world. God knows your whole life path, front to end. He
Mhm.
knows all the decisions you're going to make, all the steps you're going to do, all the traumas you're going to have, everything. And he knows if you're going to go to hell or heaven. And to me, I was pretty much along the line of God knows I'm going to hell. I know I'm going to hell. I've been in my head the last fucking 5 years. I feel like
Mhm.
I'm going to hell, you know?
So when you're in that mindset, you start to say, might as well enjoy it then. It's like all of
Yeah.
this perversity and sexuality, might as well fucking go for it.
Might as well, but also it feels like you're hurting yourself at the same time because
Mm.
you still believe it in some sense. I don't know.
Mm.
I wasn't completely like God doesn't exist. I was still like, okay, well, I'm taking a big risk by saying,
Maybe if I'm good today, you will forgive me a bit.
yeah, maybe I could change it all if I pray really hard. You know, maybe I
No.
can be a good
Mhm.
Christian boy, and I
Mhm.
won't have any of the feelings I have inside
But
anymore.
then you think about boobs once and you're back to hell, gone.
Yeah, I'm not even boobs, just friggin' myself.
Oh yeah, Bob
You know,
Marley's voice.
Bob Marley's voice. You know, yeah. Oof. Um. Yeah.
So you
So
also said that you were pretty depressed, and that's how your mom knew. Um,
that's when I said I was going to therapy. I said,
yeah.
but I didn't tell her what kind of therapy. And then she
Mhm.
says, "Oh, like what therapy?" And I go, "Gender therapy." And she's
Hmm.
like, "Hmm." And to her, she has no idea what that means
Mhm.
whatsoever. To her, the closest thing that comes to her head is maybe is gay.
Oh. Mhm.
Melody's gay.
Mhm.
Um. So she's like, "Okay, well, she's not gonna tell her kids she can't go to therapy." So in fact, she says, "I'll bring you." And at first, I was planning on taking the train and going to there myself. And I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe it'll be good to sit and talk with my mum a little bit."
Yeah.
And so we did that. And I went to my first appointment, and I didn't really tell her what it was about. Really, I didn't even know myself. I was like, I'm just there to talk and figure some stuff out
Mhm.
because I've been thinking a lot about it. And I sit and talk with a guy who was a trans man himself. And I talked to him about my suicidal ideation. I talked to him about the fact that I'm a girl on the internet 24/7. The fact that I pray to God every night that I wake up a girl, and he tells me you're transgender, and I'm like, yeah, but what does that mean? That's fucked up. I want to kill myself. Pretty much that's how I felt when he told me that. I'm like, oh no, now I'm transgender.
Mm.
You know. And we talked a lot about that. And then at the end, I actually walked out of there, and I was like, huh. I feel really good for having, like, talked to somebody about this because
Mhm.
I'd never talked to anybody about it. It'd just been in my head. And even though I was, like, more confused than I was enlightened, it felt good that I could actually start to express that I had these feelings at all whatsoever. And
Mhm.
even just, like, the suicidal ideations, I never even expressed that to anyone else either. And just getting it out there and saying, you know, now somebody knows that I'm in on the edge, at least, that helps.
Were you were you doing self-harm at the time?
No, I
Not
mean,
yet?
I think honestly, the role play was its own form of self harm in a
Okay.
sense, and the porn addiction going on watching, like it wasn't nice porn I was watching. It was kind of the
Mm.
more extreme, misogynistic, not ethical porn that I was consuming at the time.
So
Um,
after that appointment, you were like 16,
I think I was 15 actually.
15?
Yep. And so after that appointment, I talked to my mom more about it, and then I talked to my online mentor friend. And the more I talk about it, the more I'm terrified, really, about what it means to actually do transition. Because you come to the understanding that I come to the understanding I am transgender, and then you go, what the fuck does that mean?
Mm.
Like, really, in practice, living tomorrow, what does it mean to be transgender? And for a long time, to me, it just meant, uh, fuck. It meant not good. I'm fucked. Like, the next the rest of my life is just going to be one race of catching up. And it
Mm.
really just compounded on itself pretty much. At that point, you know, I think I was like gripped by depression, like the worst of it probably. And my mum, after finding a bit more about transgender, I see more psychologists, more psychiatrists, and everything like that. We talk, and I take antidepressants. I just talk a lot. And at one point, I tell my mom straight up, I'm transgender, and I think I want to transition.
Mhm.
And she's not sure about it. She really mixed up sexuality and gender. She's like, so you're gonna have a boyfriend? You're gonna like she didn't really figure it out exactly. And I was like, I don't know anything about having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'm not ready for that. All I know is I want to be a girl. And she's
Mhm.
like, but you're not going to be a girl. And I'm like, I know that, but I think I can try. And I've heard about
Mhm.
hormones, and I've heard about surgeries, and I've heard about, you know, the possibility of going that direction. And so, can we do that?
So around 16, you you learned of the possibility of walking that path of life, of being transgender.
Mhm. And I actually told myself and my mom and my friends that I am transgender. And I
Mhm.
told my family as well. And that's where my mom, she she didn't understand it at first. She went and researched a lot into it. She is a very empathetic person. She's been in pain her whole life.
Mhm.
And she knew I was suffering pretty greatly at the time. I was in a very deep depression. She had seen me pretty much go downhill since puberty. And she was wondering what was wrong with me as well in many ways.
Mhm.
And so when I said this to her, she was like, "Okay, at least a path I can follow to see if how I can help," you know. And she read a lot on what it is to be transgender. And at one point, she read a definition on what gender dysphoria is, and she said it resonated deeply with her, and she like cried, and she said she understands where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
And so since that moment, she was pretty much like a key help in realizing the journey. And at the time, I was still so depressed that, I say I want to go towards being transgender, but what does that mean in practice when I can't even leave my room, like
Yeah.
without getting a lot of courage? And so my mum would bring me to doctor's appointments. My mum went through the court system to get me on hormones before I was 18. And we did the whole year long, bringing all the doctor's notes to the court and being like, this is, we should put this girl on hormones.
Mhm.
And the judge even said, uh, I don't see anyone more in need of this treatment than Melody here.
Oh
And so
yeah.
we should get her on it now. And so I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't there for that, but that's what my mom told me. She said
They had
maybe
a
my mom,
dress and heels ready for you, a little bag of makeup, complimentary
not
of the judge.
exactly. And so yeah, at the same time, my dad responded completely opposite. Like my dad was like, my first son of this relationship is now a girl. I
Mm.
have failed as a father. And
Mm.
he was going through a lot of his own. He's a pretty damaged person with a lot who brought a lot of like the cycle of
His own demons.
exactly. And so when that happened, it pretty much triggered his depression to go into overdrive as well. And and from that point, it was a snowball of his depression going into overdrive, damaging relationships in the family, uh, until now my dad's pretty much separated from the whole family, and we're,
Mhm.
we're without him. But
How long did it take from the moment with the judge, you being officially transgender in the eyes of the state, and your dad splitting with your family? Was there a few years?
I think 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it was still I still lived in the same house as my dad for a lot of the time that I was the early years of transition. Where for me, early transition, I didn't actually do much transitioning. I didn't socially transition much. I didn't change how I wore my clothes or anything. I still pretty much lived in my room playing video games, jerking off, you know, expressing myself through the internet, that kind of stuff. And so, not much change. I was still at home. Yeah, for roughly 2 years. And around that same point, so at some point after I had already started hormones, one of my psychiatrists said, there is this place where you can go where you'll be monitored by nurses pretty much 24/7 while you're there. But the goal of this place is to put mentally unwell kids into a social and learning environment to get them ready to reintegrate back into the regular school system.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never been to school in my entire life. I had wanted to go for a long time, up until the point where I thought I was too far behind to catch up. So up until 14, I was like, I want to go to school. Can I still go to school, please? My mom would say no. And then at 14, I was like, I give up. You know, I can't go to school. If I go to school now, I'm fucked, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so he offered this, and I was very apprehensive at first, you know, huge anxiety going to a little uh, award where they with mentally unwell kids and all that. But I went just as I turned 17, and it was an extremely intense period of my life. Probably, I think, lasted 4 to 5 months. Just 4 to 5 months at this place. I boarded there for the first three, and then after a couple of episodes of mental mental episodes, they didn't let me board there anymore, and I just kept going for 2 months afterwards until they kicked me out for being too mentally unstable, which in fact wasn't actually the case. Um, I think that just the one psychiatrist or psychologist that I had monitoring me was of a different school of treatment than I actually needed. And so when I didn't respond to what she was giving to me, she felt I was hopeless, when in fact she was just not approaching me in the right way. And there was other people in the same area, in the same school, that were approaching me the right way and were getting through to me. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the main doctor in charge of me was not seeing me go in her step by step
Mm-hmm.
process into getting better. But over the period of 5 months that I was there, I did get a lot better. Mainly because I was socialized. I met people, friends that became like the bedrock friends of my early adult life. I met at this place, the ward, and I became socialized. And for the first time in my life, I didn't spend most of my time on the internet. I spent it
Mm-hmm.
with other people my age who were also dealing with heavy minds full of angst and pain. And so there was a lot of unhealthy bonding over that pain, but there was
Mm-hmm.
also a lot of life lessons learned in very rapid succession, from heartbreak to falling in love to being stabbed in the back to gossiping to bullying, all that kind of stuff I experienced in a very short period of time with very intense emotions from all people involved in it. But overall, it was for the best. And that was when I was 17.
And so you got kicked out of this place,
Hmm.
clashing with the the head psychiatrist
Pretty
over
much,
there.
I just kept having episodes, pretty much, and
Mm.
so
So you got yourself, you were out of this place a little bit better socialized, but not entirely. Still
yes.
having episodes. How did you
Hmm.
deal with that? You are back at home?
Well, yeah, I was back at home, but I had been given a taste for socializing, and
Mm.
I think it's obvious that I'm an extrovert, and
Mm.
so to me, I was like, I need to keep doing this. And yeah, so I installed Tinder on my phone. At the time, Tinder, you
Oh,
didn't have to be 18 for. There was like a 16 to 18-year-old Tinder that was
oh,
like for
okay.
the kids there to meet people. And I still was in contact with the people I had met through the ward. And we went out and got drunk a lot. The first time I ever got drunk was with them. The first time I got high was with them.
In the park.
Yep. I had my first vodka drunk, and it was funny because we got drunk on this absolutely rank soap tasting vodka, and I just sculled it. And I was in the park with my friends in the middle of the city, bawling my eyes out, just like. And this guy walks past, and this is all I remember. This guy walks past and goes, "This kid needs drugs." And
No.
all my friends start laughing at me while I'm like, and then we went and saw Jurassic World, and I fell asleep just as the opening title screen came up, and I woke up just as the credits
No
started rolling.
way.
Yep. And so, yeah, I was becoming more socialized, and I met someone through Tinder that knew someone that I knew through the ward, and we both didn't like her. And so we gossiped about her
Mhm.
together, and we kind of bonded over that. And then one day she invites me to come drinking with her and her friends in the park in the city. And I go, and I'm like, I don't know, I need to get outside and move and do stuff and meet people. Now I know that's what I need. I don't try to stay at home as much. Like, I feel like it's possible that I can catch up a little bit more, especially now as I've got my new feminine name. I say I'm transgender. I still present very, very manly. Like, you know, everyone would say I'm just a young boy, pretty much,
Mhm.
a young man. Um,
At what point did you start doing the process of passing, of changing your wardrobe, of discovering makeup?
mhm. So passing is like not something that really happened
It's a
until pretty
goal, I
recently.
guess.
Yeah, but I remember for a very long time I was transgender, but I never went out and bought any new clothes. I was still working on the jeans and hoodies that my mum had been getting me since I was 15, pretty much. And for the longest time, probably up until I was like 19 years old or something. So from 15 to 19, 4 years of being transgender or being conscious that that's where I want to go without having much ways to express that. Like for a long time, I didn't actually know what it meant to express femininity in myself.
Mm.
I'd like, I come from the background of hating women in some sense. There was that really deep resentment where seeing a happy woman made me like this painful jealous, and
Mhm.
I hated it, and I hated myself for it. I hated the fact that I hated it. It was like a big cycle of emotions. So to express femininity, uh, you know, probably my early ways of doing it was expressing that through the visceral raw um, torture role play that I would do, because that was how I saw femininity. I saw porn where the woman was being abused pretty much, and
Mm.
that was what femininity was in a sense for me for a while, and so I'd express that in that same sense, but you can't really express that to the people around you in a social environment.
Not
That's not what
really, no.
femininity is really. It was a very warped, corrupted version of it.
Mm.
My first experiences cross-dressing were at nighttime. Sometimes I would, wait until all my sisters are out doing whatever. I'd go into their wardrobe and I would go to the bottom of their drawer and find the stuff that I know they're not gonna wear wear because I haven't seen them wear it for ages, and
Mhm.
I'd steal them and put them in a little box in my room, and
Mhm.
then on nights where I stayed up late enough or whatever, I would put on a little ensemble of what I could, what I stole from them, and look at myself in the mirror. And, I'd do the same with the makeup that they left at the bottom of the makeup drawer. I'd be like, "Oh, I'll steal this," and try to use it, but, there's not much, sense of fashion in the leftover clothes of your sisters and makeup and stuff like that, so, it was more just for, like, trying it out, but I didn't really feel I felt good doing it, but I didn't really feel like it was exactly right, like,
Mhm.
I especially couldn't ever see myself walking outside wearing the stuff that I was wearing, trying them on at nighttime. I
Mhm.
couldn't
Mhm.
ever possibly. imagine presenting myself wearing, my sister's skirt that's way too small, or, you know, yeah,
Mhm.
blouse that is just I've got my big shoulders and I could barely, like, it was like, tied really around the shoulders
Oh,
and stuff
I
like that,
see.
so
Mhm.
it just wasn't right. And so that was my first experience in cross-dressing and stuff like that. And, yeah, before I was pretty much accepted as a trans woman long before I started presenting as a woman or trans woman. Like, I would tell people I'm trans, I would say my name is and, they would accept that, and they would try their best. And I get misgendered a lot, but I didn't really feel bad about it because, you know, how could I ask them to, like, they're only working with the information that they're working with and their brains, and they tried to catch up, of course, but it didn't work that much. And so for 4 years or so, I was presenting as a male who says, I'm trans. Please call me she, her pronouns. I'm in the
Mhm.
process of transitioning. I'm taking hormones. My body's just beginning to change. My mind's only just beginning to open. I'm beginning to cry about dog videos on the internet, you know. But I have no idea how to express myself in the world
Mhm.
socially as a
Mhm.
feminine person. And so at some point, probably around 18, 19 years old, I started to really have my friend group. We start doing drugs together. My world starts opening up. I start socializing still very rapidly. I fall in love. I drink so much alcohol, it's stupid. I do stupid drugs, and I meet people and fuck people, and get out in the world and just live a bit. Like, I seize whatever opportunity comes towards me and I take it, not really thinking too much about the consequences or if it's right or wrong. It's just like, if I have life experience, it's a better
Mhm.
thing than not having it,
Mhm.
pretty much.
That's why you learn.
And so that was a very like a but I that was more about life experience than it was about expression. It was more about finding out where I am in relation to what the world offers.
So you are around 18, 19, presenting yourself as a woman with the pronouns and stuff, and going out with friends, with your group of friends at the time. And you said you were partying, basically, like doing
Mhm.
drugs, fucking just doing stupid
Yeah.
shit and
It's
accumulating
also
life
true that
experiences.
in this time, I met some women which I stopped hating and started falling desperately in love with.
Mm,
And so they also would treat me. They were young and open, and they would treat me like a woman. Even though I presented like a man as a trans woman, they I guess they one of them kind of took me under her wing, kind of like she's she saw that I was kind of a freak, but she wanted to give me the
she wanted to take care of you.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so it was a very helpful experience to be seen like it as well, to understand how I can express it a little bit
Mm.
as at the same time.
Did they see you as a potential relationship partner?
Not at all, not
Do
really.
you think that's because you presented as a woman?
Partly, definitely, but also just partly because, you know, I was still pretty, like, I was still pretty depressed. I didn't really love myself.
Mm,
When someone brings that energy around with them, you don't exactly see yourself,
right.
like, I had, relationships throughout the time, but the people I fell deeply in love with didn't really see me as, an option the same way. I very much experienced a kind of unrequited love. Like, I was putting everything into loving them while I knew that I was just a friend in the friend zone.
Mm,
And in fact, it was a pretty big lesson for me for a while. I pretty much had my heart broken being just a friend in the friend zone. And then I came out of that experience like, actually, I'm not ready to be in love right now at all. I don't even know who I am really. I'm still growing up. I'm going to find the friend zone and I'm going to like hook right into it and not want anything more. And I did that with another girl for another couple of years, and we that was like when life was beginning to actually resemble something I enjoyed living. The depression started to clear up a little bit. The hormones were starting to have an effect on my body. My breasts were starting to grow. My brain was beginning to, in fact, one of the main effects hormones had on my body that probably changed everything was it destroyed my libido.
Mhm.
So what used to be I
You
couldn't
say
look at a woman
libido?
libido,
Libido?
libido.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I used to not be able to look at a woman without having some kind of like, ooh, she's got a vagina under there. Now I could look at anybody and be like, sex, don't want it. Porn,
Mm.
not interested. You
Mm.
know, I'm just gonna live life without having to worry too much about it. And like I still was sexual to some degree, but I wasn't horny.
Mhm.
I wasn't
Your
like
testosterone been shut down.
pretty much. And so yeah, that changed everything when it came to how I approached life and myself and all that. And without without the cycle of self harming and pornography addiction and stuff like that, it was much easier to let go of a lot of the feelings of like toxic, the way I viewed femininity in a very toxic, pornographic, violent way.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I was able to put that all behind. And at that point, I felt pretty disgusted about. It was no longer a God guilt. It was more like a soul guilt. It wasn't God telling me you're guilty for watching porn. It was me telling me that's not healthy. The way I'm looking at these women is actually a
I
bad
see.
thing. And
I
so
see.
it was coming. The judgment wasn't coming from the higher power that was sending me to hell. The judgment was coming from myself, saying I don't want to partake in that. It's damaging. It's not good. I feel bad looking at it. Stop looking at it, pretty much.
You are integrating the moral compass instead of it being applied to you.
Pretty much. And so, yeah, I started to live life and open up. And in that time, I started to realize that actually I'm, I'm being seen as a girl. I'm not presenting myself as a girl. I still speak like a dude. I still present like a man. I need to start taking these steps. And I was still very, very lost on how to do it. But I had girls around me to start giving me pointers and
Mhm.
directions. And I could start taking clothes and being like, huh, this is mine now. And I would go to my sisters and be like, that one, out of all the things I stole from you, that one thing that I stole that I really liked, can I have that maybe? And they'd be like,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I got new clothes now. You can have it, no problem. And so, and makeup as well. I started to do a little bit of that.
So at this time, you said your libido was shut down, but did your sexual side, your desires, they were still present?
hmm
Did they start to evolve? Did you want different things?
So pretty much what would happen was they were still there. Um, a lot changed. I still had the habit of erotic role play. And in fact, going from like very toxic, unethical, bad pornography to role playing something a bit more, I'm going to explore these concepts, even though they might be a little bit extreme in a safe environment without looking at some actual terrible thing happening. And I'm going to explore the concept a little bit with a partner. And I still went pretty far, but I approached it a lot more like, you know, therapeutically almost.
Mm.
Like, I was beginning to realize that these feelings that I had been in contact with for years had some kind of, you know, root inside of me, and if I could express it through this means, then I might be able to understand it better. And
Mm.
I still kept doing it, but it wasn't sexual so much as I was like, trying to understand myself. And so I still did role play, not nearly as often as I was before, but like once every couple of months, I would have the urge, something would get stuck in my head, and I would go to the internet and create a prompt and ask people to play out this concept or idea with me till its conclusion. And did that for a while, and it's actually doing that how I met you.
Wow.
Yep. And so through this period of time, I began to evolve my sexuality as well. For a long time, I thought I was only into women. And so it
Mm.
was through this time doing the role play specifically that I realized I'm actually gonna play myself as a woman, with a man, like almost like going back to when I was with my young friend in the country,
Yeah.
playing that game again with all still the the baggage of what I had been through in between time, but it's no longer I'm playing someone else. I'm not. There's not that separation. I'm putting myself onto the page instead of a character or someone who I'm, you know.
Mhm.
And so I started to realize I was into dudes, at least on like a concept. Like I wasn't actually really realized. Like I didn't look at my friends and be like, "Oh, handsome man," but I was like, "Huh, potentially handsome man,"
Mm.
you know.
Mhm.
And yeah, I didn't know how to express the femininity in myself. My sexuality was changing. I was beginning to realize I was into men, and so it was almost as if I had caught up on the socialization at least a bit. I knew I was never gonna had been to high school or had that childhood that everyone else had, but at least on this level, I could go out to a party, meet people, get along with them, drink alcohol, have recount some stories about the things I have done now as I've lived my life a little bit. I was beginning to feel like I'd caught up socially at least. But now I felt like I needed to do the next half, which was catch up in transition, become
Mhm.
do the next half of catch up, become the woman I want to be instead of just the person I want to be, you know?
Mhm.
And so one step at a time, I started doing a bit of makeup. I started wearing different clothes, not really feminine, still pretty androgynous, but I started growing my hair out and, you know, yes. Hmm.
And so it was about at this time that we met through the internet, through role
Yes.
playing together. And you were 19.
Hmm.
So you were taking hormones for 2 years.
Yes. And it was really with you that I started my sexuality came started to come back again properly.
Mhm.
Like, I was actually starting to feel it. Like, it wasn't going to porn exactly, it was just more like, actually, I have a sexuality that is it was almost like I wiped the slate clean of all the sexual trauma I'd put on it, and I was coming at it a new kind of like a, "Huh, I'm just seeing it completely differently now." And
I had the same. I I grew up by expressing my sexuality through porn because I too was sheltered. I had no idea how to socialize, no idea how to get a girlfriend or anything. And the reason I went towards roleplay was because I was so missing that human connection. That porn was not enough for me anymore. I was about like maybe 25 years old, and the image just made me feel like even more distance.
mhm,
Like it was like the illusion lost its shine. And so I was like, I'm gonna try to reach someone and have a talk with someone and let's get sexy together. And so, yeah, through words was much easier. And it took me a while to find someone to play with because when you're a dude on the internet, you are drowned in a sea of other dudes, and like there is a couple of women just picking
yeah. I
in
mean,
that
I lived that
bucket.
for a while, and, the fact
Hmm.
that I even met you and we became something is pretty wild because I'd been doing this for years before I met you, and none of the dudes I had ever interacted with in the past had come close to building, like, a actual intimate personal relationship with. It
Mm.
was still very much more of like a, we're gonna get something from each other, so we're gonna play together, but it's a game. It's like a matchmaking on an online game. You play the
Mm.
game together, then you leave, and you go about your life, you know?
Yeah.
And it might be a game that lasts a week, it might be a game that lasts a month, but eventually, they're like, "Game over,"
Hmm.
"Thank you for that, see you
Hmm.
later." But, with you, something I don't know. The first message you sent me had a report, like, it was like, "You're speaking to me," uh, yeah,
Yeah, I
and
was.
we're building the rules of the game, and I was like,
Mm.
"Huh,
Mm.
the way you approach the game is different than how I've typically approached it," and in fact, I like that. And then from there, we put the game down for a bit, and we still played on the side, but we started talking to each other as actual people and building that connection.
Mm. Mm.
And I think I've discovered a lot about my sexuality with you. I mean, over the course of knowing you, how many years is it now? 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've evolved tremendously. Like, I've become a porn star from being someone who
Mm-hmm.
didn't really understand that much.
Mm-hmm. A porn star with your husband.
Yes,
That's pretty fun.
kind of the best way to do it,
Right, right.
especially after having watched what bad porn looks like, what unethical,
Yeah,
terrible porn comes from.
you're not being fucked by 20 strangers a week, like
20 strangers a week.
in
Damn.
the porn industry,
Yeah.
being treated like a big slab of meat.
Mm.
It's more
I
like
have a lot of self-respect while still being able to show disrespectful images, I guess.
well, we have a relationship that is mm, encompassing all the love and the feelings and the care for each other. Because we have integrated that, we can play with the darker sides too.
Here's a question for you.
Hmm.
How is it? Did you ever see yourself being with a trans woman, or was I the first contact you had with a trans woman? And how has it been for you wrapping your head around that the woman in your life is a trans woman?
So it pretty much happened. So I was so disconnected from the world outside. I was living in my room on the internet, on my computer, basically. And when I was looking for some kind of human connection, and obviously at first on these little horny erotic role plays, I was only messaging women. And like,
Cis women.
yeah, of course.
Hmm.
And no one replied to me. Like I was doing the classic pouring my heart out for a page and being like I don't know, I was putting a lot more
You were hoping
feelings.
that the more effort you put into the response, the more
Yeah.
likely they would be to actually give back to
Yeah.
you.
But in fact, I was like reading a prompt, reading an ad, and I was like, yo, it, it feels like the person who wrote this like sounds fun, like they sound interesting. So I started to take that, and I would write like 1 or 2 page, like going on like full of feelings, being like, yo, I find you amazing. And um the thing is, I took a while, like sometimes a day or two, to reply to that, and by the
Hmm.
time they would receive my letter,
It was
they
way
would
too late.
have had like 200 dudes.
Not
Like
200, maybe
like
20. 20 is still a lot of dudes
it
to go
depends
through.
on the prompt, because
Yeah.
I would sometimes I would reply to the prompts that were like on the top of the
Mhm.
leaderboard as well. And so for like it can be
Yeah.
hundreds of letters you receive. And so I was buried in the I was buried in there. I never
And you
had a
probably seemed like
chance.
a lot of effort to pick up after 2 days of responding to dudes.
Probably,
You
and they
probably
were
found someone that was
probably
working
like
at that point.
that the vibe was past, like
Mhm.
it was expunged. And so after a long time of feeling rejected because nobody replied to me despite pouring my heart out on the page, I I started looking at um, the tag T for M, so like trans for men, and I was like, if I find someone who's just willing to play that part, why not? After all, it's just words. Like it's we can role play
So
that.
you had never really ever encountered like trans people in porn in the past, or
Not really.
hmm.
Like maybe once or twice in porn, but it was always um trans porn where instead of a dude fucking a woman, it would be a trans woman fucking a woman.
Mhm.
So it
It's
was
like
like,
lesbian plus dick.
yeah, it was like, well, the more tits in the mix, like why not?
Yeah, okay.
So that was my my experience with trans
Mhm.
porn
And that's
trans.
very, like, I mean, a real trans person and seeing that in a video, like, once amongst all the other ones is a very different experience, so
Mm,
mhm. And so that was your first, encounter with trans people, really? Like,
yeah. You are the first trans person I ever spoke to, really.
mhm,
And so I sent you a message because I thought your ad was fun. Um, and we touched on that on the first episode of the podcast, but like you wanted to like, yeah, play yourself and like be played with, like be a bit dominated. You wanted a man to come in there and take you a bit.
mhm.
So that fitted exactly what I wanted, and I just I just went for it.
And so when we started building, like, a connection, like, as people, we hadn't showed pictures to each other or anything like that. When you started to, like, how quickly on did you start to catch feelings? Because I know I started to catch feelings for you before I'd seen any photos of you or anything like that.
Mm.
So was there any kind of, like, anxiety about the fact that I'm a trans woman and on the other side of the internet, what does that mean for, like, the real person sitting on the other screen? Like, were you thinking about that much? Like,
Um, because of the fact that we were separated by the whole world. I was in France, you were in Australia. It was online relationship. I don't know if it sounds cruel or not, but I was pretty confident with the fact that if at any point in time I was uncomfortable, I could just like turn this off.
mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'd done that many, many times on my time on the internet.
Yeah,
I'd
it's
gotten to a
like,
point where I was uncomfortable with someone and turned it off. Yeah.
so I could ghost you whenever. And the fact that I never did is really
I mean,
like impressive.
I had faced the same thing with you. I'd been like, we're going further and further, but I know that there's like a secret nuclear button, and at some point, I
Yeah.
don't remember when the button turns off. Be like, actually, that button's just not going to ever be used.
hmm
And if ever this doesn't work, I don't ghost him. I tell him, uh, as a person I've built a relationship
Yeah,
with, that
of
this
course.
isn't going to work.
Of course.
And you have to consider that when you start to build a long distance relationship as well. That at some point, the feelings are there that you're not ghosting them, you're breaking up over the internet. You know, but we never got that. We never did that.
True. And so I was also not just looking for sex, I was looking for a relationship, but I was so lonely. Even just a friend was such a step up in my life, in my social life. And so, even if it didn't work between us as a couple, I would have been more than happy to have a friend to share like music,
Mhm.
culture, shows, like to talk, to
So there
play
wasn't
games
really any
with.
part of you that was like, they're transgender, that I don't understand that exactly,
I've been curious.
yeah.
Like the thing is, like yeah, I'm a curious person. I'll go where like God leads me. You know, it's just reality happens, and you're like, huh, that exists.
Yeah.
Why not look at that? And
Mm,
then you build a relationship with it. You're like, I like it or I don't, and you make your own
and
judgments.
so has your sexuality changed and evolved now that you have a trans woman in your life and, like, that's had its impact on your sexuality?
Um, well, yeah, of course it has. I would say that, and I believe you noticed, like we never really role played. Um, like I stayed pretty much in the role of what a man would do with a woman,
Mhm.
um, and the fact that you had like different genitalia. I mean, you had a hole in there I could fuck, like two
I
even.
was still the penetree
Exactly,
to be
exactly.
penetrated.
And
Yeah.
it never really happened that like I wanted to switch roles or anything. It's just like it's like a woman without a vagina, and I just
And I think
thought
that's
about it
partly
that
what I
way.
was searching for at the same time when it came to the role play as well. I wanted to kind of, find how I could be that with what I was working with because for a
Hmm.
long time when I'd role played, I'd done the whole, I'm a different person. I have everything working the way it is,
Mhm.
but I wanted to be treated like the same kind of woman I would role play as if I had changed the whole body, but still be working with the same conceptual
Mhm.
body that I really have.
And I would say that at the time, what I was very much struggling with was even just the concept of being able to open myself up sexually with someone, like
Hmm.
to express that masculine side of me of I want to impose myself upon you. I want to fuck you. I want to penetrate you. And how is that going to be received? Like, I was still very much struggling with that base concept of I have to be the man, I have to impose myself, propose something, and you have to accept or not. Like, I'm not trying to
Hmm.
violate anyone's consent, but to go there was already such a step I had to work in my mind. So being sexual with someone, even just through role plays and words, was very much an exercise in accepting my side of sexuality, my own possibility of expressing this side of me and it being accepted. So it could have been with anyone, as long as they're human, of course. Like,
Hmm. No,
it's like, you know.
no, you're gonna do it with the cat girl.
But it's just I wanted to be perceived as someone capable of sexual behavior and that being accepted and
Mhm.
even so
So you
desired.
typically didn't accept it in yourself, I imagine, before then. You
Yeah.
did like your sexual urges, you also felt some kind of shame or guilt about, in a sense.
I don't exactly know if it's shame or guilt, but it was very, very much repressed. Like
Mhm.
I grew up with um, like the women in my family were had terrible relationships with men in their past, and they were um, they were burying sexuality deep underground, deep in the feelings too. And it's not even that it was taboo to talk about it, it just never really happened. Like when um when I was like 15, 16, my mom gave me like a pack of condoms. Like, if you ever want to like be safe. And I was
Want to what?
like, I never ever even kissed someone. Like, what do you
Mhm.
like? It was good because I felt like safe and accepted and all of that, but at the same time, I didn't have any kind of keys to accept being sexual in the first place. Um, Basically, amongst the issues that my parents passed on to me as that part of the baggage of generational trauma is self-image issues. So I grew up overweight. We had a not excellent relationship with food. There was a bit too much of it, a bit too low quality, and I was a bit chubby, like always. And so my mom was struggling with her weight as well a lot, and she was putting so much hate towards that. It was always, I'm too fat, I'm not desirable, I'm like, she always wanted to change herself without ever really knowing how or managing to do it. So, as a kid, a bit overweight, I took that like a sponge and I really,
You started seeing yourself as undesirable.
oh yeah, no doubt.
Mhm.
I was finding in myself, in my appearance, all the reasons why I was undesirable.
All the reasons why your mother said she was undesirable, and therefore
Exactly.
you took them upon yourself to say, I must be undesirable as well
Yeah,
then.
pretty
Mhm.
much.
And therefore to approach someone sexually while seeing yourself as undesirable was almost like asking to be painfully rejected
Yeah.
and to
Oh
have it
yeah.
confirmed.
Oh yeah. I didn't have any love for myself, any love for my appearance. It was pretty much I saw myself as this ugly little potato, completely unable to do anything. I was weak and worthless. And to even go towards someone and wrap your head around, like, maybe they like me, in order to even go there, you first have to like yourself.
Hmm.
Always.
Well, when you approached me, did that come from a place of liking yourself, or did you learn to kind of like yourself through the fact that I liked you as well?
Through that, because at this time, like, we
You
didn't
were trying to
have.
sell yourself to me as well. You were
Yeah,
trying to show the parts that you did like
yeah,
about yourself to me,
exactly.
and so when they
I
were received
was.
well.
There was so much barriers between us that I felt safe sharing it. And
Mhm.
I was like, if I'm rejected, it's okay. Like, it's internet.
Mhm.
It's fine. I can turn it off. I can ghost. I can do whatever. I have enough of an escape route that it won't cut me to
Mhm.
my core. In person, instantaneity, like, of social interaction in person makes that extremely hard. Like, it's crucifying. Being in a relationship, exploring that side of sexuality and all with a trans woman helped, because it was hard for me to go towards a girl and propose being sexy together. It was much easier to find someone who has a little bit more masculinity within themselves, because it meant that they would propose things too. Like, it might seem so a bit crude or simple, but like, it's a fun experience for a man to have someone be like, "Yo, I want to suck your dick,"
Mhm.
and you're gonna find that way more, that side, the vibe, with a trans woman than you would with a girl.
Well, it depends, I'm
No,
sure,
of
on the
course, there's.
individual trans woman or the individual girl, but,
It does. It
at
does.
least it was the case with me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
So, yeah, a kind of, having a trans wife, or trans partner, even on the internet, it lets you feel a little bit more comfortable, getting sexual because the sexual vibes were returned in a equal, intensity. It wasn't so much a
Yeah,
one-sided,
yeah.
"I'm going towards you, do you accept or no?" It was more
Hmm.
like, "Do you wanna play this game? Yeah, I wanna play this game. Do you wanna play it like this? Oh, I'm open to playing it like
Yeah,
this," you
I
know?
thought the dialogue was easier. Like,
Mhm.
we had a common base of,
It
like,
definitely
being
felt like it
horny.
wasn't so much of a it wasn't so much of like a flirty, will they, won't they. It was much more of like a each step was, thoroughly communicated
Yeah. Are
kind
you into
of
that? Yeah.
yeah,
No. Let's do it.
yeah. It wasn't so much, me as well being the socialized the way I was. I didn't exactly have any idea of how I was supposed to be,
Mm.
approached by anybody, or how I
Mm.
was supposed to approach anybody. So I didn't really have like this idea of, the man's supposed to make the first move or the woman's
Mm.
supposed to be passive or anything like that, which, isn't exactly how it's supposed to be. But I guess there's a little bit of socialization to that aspect of thing. If you see all the media you ingest, it only happens one way. Then one day you're sitting there expecting that Prince Charming is going to ride in on a horse when in fact Prince Charming is also a bit unsure about how he's supposed to approach anyone because, you know.
Yeah. Overall,
Hmm.
whether it's a woman, a man, a trans woman, like, having another human in your life, another person in which you can be entirely true to, not hide anything, a partner in life, has been such a help. To have someone in which I can have that trust. that bond in which I can,
Be vulnerable like that with.
yeah, be vulnerable,
I mean, together
confide your
we've
secrets.
faced a lot of what the initial trauma, your self-image, the generational trauma about yourself and women. We faced that together one step
Yeah,
at a time, and it
yeah.
wasn't something like all of a sudden you got me and this was better. It's like you got me now, and we breached that subject together. And having that outside mind and that other perspective to take what you're telling them and to feed it back to you in a way,
Hmm.
it changes how you view
Oh
yourself and the
yeah,
world
oh yeah,
around you.
oh yeah. It feels like it feels like you can reach some kind of balance. You can bounce off your ideas off each other and have the other person tell you if you're crazy or not. Because I will have ideas.
I've told you you're crazy on multiple occasions.
Yeah, I will have ideas that are not healthy, like where I go a bit in the depressed, darker side of thoughts, and you're here balancing me out, being like, no, it's not true. And look at
Mm.
yesterday, how great you did, and all of that. Thank you so much. Seriously.
Thank you too.
I praise be.
Praise be.
I thank
Amen.
God every day
Hallelujah.
that you're in my life. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Hmm.
So I guess that's kind of the story of my transition up until I met you. And then we guess we can continue that conversation alongside sex work in the next podcast.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Amazing.